he's done right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Good?
Yeah, baby! Double header! Look at that net jump!
How's some big hogs, eh? How's the live well looking?
Well, it's finally time to head south again to find some walleyes. Flights were actually cheaper to fly than drive my pickup down. The boys were already down there doing some pre-fishing, so I took advantage. Got down just in time to head out for this beautiful Wednesday morning. We were just hitting that big warm-up that was hitting Detroit. The winds were still a little bit high, but the weather was headed for some warm days. I think we actually broke records for the first few days. We went ahead and rode by Trenton Trench. Plenty of people fishing there, but we strolled around to the backside of Grosse Ile, which is one of our favorite spots, as well as a lot of other people. The secret was out. The river was turning on. Lots of boats on the river, even for being a Wednesday, and it did not take us long to get into them. I think this is the first one we had on film. Nice one already, over 20. We really pulled some decent size this year, and the action was just getting started. They were, I'd say overall, biting a little bit lighter than normal, but the water temperature was already above 45, and they were in there and they were hungry. So if you let it sit there long enough, they were hitting it. I was doing kind of a slow descent with more of a pause at the bottom. It's kind of nice about the backside of this island is it's not very snaggy, kind of like the Trenton Trench. You can really take your time and work the bottom if you want to, and we were really starting to get into them. I was trying to get my baits dialed in here a little bit. I ended up, for most mornings, going with my absolute favorite with the solid chartreuse 5/8. And then for a rubber minnow, I was running I believe it was MoTown Funk, where it's a darker purple sparkle on the back, and the belly is more just a general off-white. And that seemed to do pretty well. I think most everybody switched over to what I had after a while. I see the captain there. He's got his blue ice with the green tail. He was really getting into them before I got there pre-fishing with that color. Really with the bright, shiny days, essentially as soon as 10:30, 11 o'clock hit that day, just put something on bright and sparkly, and they really seemed to like it. There you see a little bit better close-up of that MoTown Funk. I think really only one of the downsides of the spot we were at is we're really hitting them in about 7 to 12, 13 feet of water, which is super fun. You really get the numbers, but it seems like as soon as you set the hook and crank her once, they're right at the top, so you really got to be quick with that net. Otherwise, they're sitting around at the top of the surface, head shaking and bouncing around, and we did end up losing, I'd say 2, 3, 4 fish at the boat every day, just for habit of fact of being that shallow of water. As you'll see a little bit later in the video too, we had some debate over what net to use. We weren't quite happy with this one. We thought it was a little bit too deep, and we kept having stingers getting caught up in that nylon. So anybody has any recommendations, go ahead and let us know. Which is not usually a huge issue, but when you're catching that many fish per pass like we all were here, you really start to find the shortcomings of your equipment. And that was our main gripe of the day, was possibly thinking about getting into a different net. Looking at a couple nicer fish we're getting here, a couple over 20. The captain gets one here. I think I pick up one next. And that was the story. Lots of eaters and lots of nice spawned out females. But starting to get higher spirits. We're knowing we're going to limit out and having some fun. Morale really started going to an all-time high after that. We were starting to get pretty close to our 5-man limit, and you could tell. Tried a different angle on the boat there to get a little bit more action in the back. Here I hook into one on the back corner. As I said, it's all hands on deck to get that net ready, because they come to the surface so fast in that 8, 9 feet of water. And what a start to the weather. Here it is, probably just a little bit after 12. Already down into t-shirts and shorts for some of us. And the good news was it was only getting better for us that whole week. Just got extremely lucky with the weather. We love coming down every year, and we'll do it rain or shine, but it's certainly more enjoyable when it's more shine than rain. And that should bring us to our first 5-man limit. This is Dano's last fish of the day, and that one makes 30. And up comes my favorite part of the day, taking a tally of the fish and making sure our addition is on point. So here we are, taking out all 30 of them. guess it's now good to have a little bit deeper of a net, but we're going to get them all out, make sure we got an accurate count, and then we'll get them all gilled up and put back in that box and get them draining out. Wish the audio was a little bit better. It was still kind of a windy day, but man, if you could just hear all the hooting and hollering we were doing in the boat, we were having such a good time. It's also a good time. You can really see the size variation we have. We have, I'd say, maybe a handful that are near the 15 mark, but I'd say our average size was 20 or 21 inches because we got a lot of good ones in there too. Just a really nice mixed bag, and it only gets better throughout the week. Feel free to keep watching the lovely fish handling action, but just to recap the Wednesday, like I said, water temp was just a hair over 45 degrees, bouncing kind of between 45, 46. We're all running kind of that MoTown funk, a little bit of dark, a little bit of sparkle on the AM, and then honestly, we all switched over to something just absolutely bright at about 10:30 or 11. They really seemed to like that bright sparkle as soon as that full sun came out, as did we in t-shirts and shorts. Just an all-around great day, a great start to the week. And we didn't really burn a whole lot of gas either. We actually spent the entire day on the backside of Grosse Ile there. It was a little bit of a south wind, so we probably weren't actually in the best position on the river. Honestly, I don't know if they were getting them just as good in other places, but we were just doing so good that there wasn't really any reason to move. So we just kept making passes right up towards the narrows and then kind of separating out down by the mouth of Erie, and we picked up, you know, at least 5 every pass. It was an absolutely great day of fishing. We made it out, honestly, not super early, as you've seen us heading out in Trenton that morning. We were on the water by probably 9:30, and we were limited before 2 p.m. So just a nice day out on the water. You can certainly get a nice early bird bite in the morning if you want to, but when they're in there, sometimes it really doesn't matter. Just an incredible fishery. This was honestly the first time I'd ever put my hands on 30 different walleye in a row. It wouldn't be the last, as you'll see coming in the week, but just an incredible fishery down here. The Erie spawn, the Lake St. Clair spawn. If none of you have experienced it yet or have experienced it in the past, I will assure you it is actually getting better. Yes, I know that people catch a large amount of fish out of that river system, but it supports it, and it continues to grow. As you can see, the slot numbers and take home from the Saginaw Bay is always increasing as well. So if you haven't, if you're looking for something fun to do outside Michigan first thing in the spring, head on down to the Motor City and get you some of this action, because you can absolutely not beat it anywhere else. I've heard some good things about the west end of the UP over by the Wisconsin border on the Menominee River. I heard there's a similar spawn off of Lake Michigan. However, none of us have actually taken that plunge and tried that out yet, so I can't speak for that too, but maybe someday. And that's going to about do it for Wednesday. We ended up heading back to the camper for some suds and dinner, take a couple more awesome grip and grins in the sunshine, and here we go Thursday. We ended up heading out a little bit further downriver towards where we were staying instead of running all the way up to Elizabeth Park and heading out through Trenton. But back to our same spot, backside of Grosse Ile, have a little bit more fun in the sun. And we did not waste any time rolling in. We were already starting to get some fish in the boat, and then onto my favorite piece of video from the whole trip, a big doubleheader with 2 6-pounders. The captain and I end up hooking into one at the same exact time, and as usual, whatever one comes in first gets netted first. However, they both came in at the exact same time, and luckily for us, swam absolutely at each other, as my brother-in-law somehow netted both 6-pounders in one swipe of the net. It was incredible.
This one is big. Back to him onto the ground.
Yeah, baby! Double header! Look at that net job, Billy!
Look at that mess.
Look at that mess.
One of my favorite parts of the whole trip. And that's how the entire morning went. I didn't get a whole lot more footage because we were constantly cranking and netting fish the entire day. And another beautiful 5-man limit, similar to Wednesday, with probably even a little bit more size. Well, Friday morning the water was absolutely glass. We were ripping up into the 50s out to the favorite spot, and it didn't take us long. Connected on a nice 25-incher. Now, the funny story about this, we actually had so many fish in the live well the past few days. Somehow, some fish snapped the tip off of the water return, actually the water output on the live well, and we opened the lid and it would spray right at us. So kind of funny stuff you'd never think would happen, but Here we are hooking into them. I think this is the first one we got on video of the day. Probably actually the smallest fish of the day. But don't get me wrong, we didn't get too many that size. We ended up with our best 5-fish bag for that day. So for those that don't know, we had there was a MWT walleye tournament down there that weekend too, and it was kind of you get to keep 8 fish per day. You weigh your 5 biggest fish per day, and the leaders, I believe, really only came in with 31, 32-pound bags for the entire day, either Saturday or Sunday. This, of course, being Friday, we actually had our best 5-fish bag size today. I think we went back. We had one at 6'2", one at 6'4", I believe 2 fish at 5'8". It ended up coming out just right at or right underneath 30 pounds for a 5-fish bag. So we were right up there with all the pros too. You know, everyone was catching them too. It was no surprise. Just absolutely beautiful weather out. I'm sure coming up here pretty soon we'll be stripping down some layers into shorts, getting sunburns, having an absolute blast out there in the good weather. Other than that, we were still fishing around quite a bit of boats. Again, we actually stayed in this same spot the entire time. Well, we were down there fishing. Usually we bounce around the river a little bit, sometimes even all the way up to Lake St. Clair. But the boys did some bouncing around a few days before I got there, and honestly, this was one of the best spots they found. So we stuck it out there. I'd say we ground them out there, but it didn't take a whole lot of grinding. They were coming in pretty easy. And it was another record-breaking day temperature-wise as well. I believe Detroit had its warmest day that Thursday and that Friday ever recorded, and it shows. It was an absolute blast out there. As far as water temperature, I believe by Friday it was already up into the 47, 48 degree range. Almost, you know, getting to be too warm for the stripers coming in, but they were still hitting. We didn't actually end up any striped bass or any cohos, so apparently we hit it just right. I'll give you another couple close-ups of our lure setups, but as far as depths and weights go, we were fishing anywhere in this channel, I believe I mentioned it before, but anywhere from 8 to 15 feet. We started off Wednesday, Thursday fishing closer in that 8 to 10 foot range, and then we found that we actually bumped out into the channel a little bit more, and we were hitting bigger fish and more fish in the 10 to 14 feet range. Plus you get probably an extra half a second to net them, which sometimes makes a little bit of a difference. As far as weights on our jigs, I always run 5/8. There's so much debate. There's people that run 3/8. There's people that run 1 ounce. Honestly, it probably doesn't matter that much. It's just personal preference. I'd go a little bit heavier if we were in real deep water, but I really like 5/8. It just combos really well with my rod. I'm running very, very light 4-pound fire line. Again, very debatable on brands and weights and everything else, but it seems like the smaller you go on the line, the more fish you catch, which kind of makes sense. But of course, you get a little bit, a lot of easier breakage. We had to fist a couple of them into the boat, which you can get away with the 15 to 17 inches. But if you try yanking one in 20 or over with that 4-pound, it ain't gonna make it. So there's a little bit of a trade-off, but I think it paid off in the end. And again, highly debatable, but I never switched from a red eye solid chartreuse jig head. Here's a little bit better look at my setup. As you can see, there's that red eye chartreuse 5/8. I swear by the eyes. Some people do, some people don't. And this was actually the hottest color on Friday. Normally, I don't run a whole lot of green plastics, but for some reason, this super duper sparkle, essentially it's a blue ice, but green. Not sure what the formal name of it is, but we threw that on there and we ended up picking up more fish on that than anything else.
60% of the time, they work every time.
Yeah, you don't even really have to jig.
And then further into the nuance, we always run live bait. Again, yeah, you can catch them without it, but I think it helps with it on there. And then kind of even ahead of that, I always grab some of the biggest minnows I can find in the bait well. I was probably running usually a 3 to 4 inch minnow on there. We had some smaller ones in there that would probably work too, but you know, bigger, better, bigger bait, bigger fish. Whether it worked or not, who knows. And just in normal fashion, as soon as 12:30, 1 o'clock hit, we put a few more in the boat, and that would do it for our limit on Friday. Still had to take them out to count. Of course, we were at a 24 fish limit with 4 guys instead of a 30 on 5, but it's still a lot of fish in the boat. And takes us into Saturday morning, our last full day of fishing. Another absolute dead calm, super warm, nice day out on the water, heading out of our favorite spot. heading into our favorite spot. And as expected, no shortage of boats. Of course, this is Saturday, so this is the first day of tournament day, and I just wanted to do a quick pan just to show you some of the numbers of boats and fishermen out on this river. And it didn't take us long to get into them again, even with all the competition. Our very first pre-spawn female, a beautiful 26-incher. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a weigh on her. We lost the scale somewhere around in the confusion of the week, but an absolute beautiful fish. The other post-spawn female we had, so the eggs out of her, that was that big 6'2" pounder at 26 inches. So I would have to say maybe upwards towards 7, maybe a bit higher, but you never quite know. But she had a full belly. Just another nice morning out on the water. I think I hook up into another one right here. A funny story about Saturday morning. I didn't get it on video, but for the first time ever since I've been fishing down here, I think it's going on 9 years, I picked up a fish on the very first drop of my jig head. Never even touched the bottom. The very first time I dropped it in the water, I picked up on it and there was already a fish on it. Just an absolute unreal fishery down here. It's usually from people jealous they didn't go, but I've heard a lot of stories of, I can't believe you guys pound that river so much. That's way too many fishermen. That's way too many boats. You're going to affect the population. I don't really know if it's healthy or not, but I've heard numbers that population from Erie and St. Clair are still continuing to rise. And that's been the trend the past 3 or 4 years. You'll notice in the Saginaw Bay, slot limits and sizes have also increased. And the walleye downstate here are just booming right now. I don't know if there's going to be an abrupt end. I hope not. I hope it stays like this for a very long time. But I assure you, somehow with all these fishermen and all these boats in here, the fish are still continuing to increase, at least for Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair, and the Lake Huron fishery. And I guess to round everything out, my biggest words of advice for heading down here would just be play it by the water and play it by the weather. Honestly, I think the fish are in there for around a month, obviously hotter and slower at certain times. But if you find a day or a certain set of days where it's going to get really warm and you really get that water temperature going up there, it's going to help you out a ton. Also, where water clarity is a huge thing too. Just because it's 80 degrees in a beautiful day, if it poured 2 inches of rain the day before, the water quality is just not going to be there. So play it by the water, play it by the weather. I know some people probably have to put their vacation or their time in ahead of time. You kind of have to guess. We usually try to stick out with the first or second week of April. We find that works the best, but talking to other anglers and ourselves included, we've been down there with it snowing on us, and we've been down there fishing in shorts and a t-shirt. Both are fun, but I will assure you the 80 degrees in shorts is a little bit funner. And that's 2023 in the books. Keep those lines vertical. I'll see you outside.
Some big hogs, eh? How's the live well looking?